What's going on, everyone? Nick Filato here to break down some Greg Van Roten tape. Yes, the New York Giants added the 34-year-old interior offensive lineman who played next to Jermaine Illuminor last season for the Las Vegas Raiders under Carmen Bricillo, the current New York Giants offensive line coach. And these first plays that I'm going to run, the first 10 or so plays, we're going to see number 70, Greg Van Roten, operating in space on some design screens and also some chip and climb blocks. And these are impressive for somebody of his age. Again, he's 34 years old, the former UPenn standout, the journeyman, played the second most snaps in his career last year, 1,025. All but one of them were at right guard, and it appears like the Giants are going to move him back to right guard to play next to Jermaine Illuminor once again, and that will kick John Runyan back to left guard, which he has played extensively, even though Runyan has played all three positions, more so just the guard positions. And Runyan previously said that he wanted to stay at right guard, but it's still early in camp because he doesn't like the flip-flop, so I'm sure he'll be okay flipping to left guard, and the Giants may be able to have a solidified offensive line come this season. We'll see what happens with Evan Neal. We can see how Greg Van Roten operates in space, how he takes these effective angles, how he gets his head across the body to eliminate these backside pursuit defenders. This is a player who had 0 penalties last year in all of those snaps. He's only had 9 penalties in his entire career. That's 4,626 snaps with only 9 penalties. For reference, there were 17 offensive linemen last year with more than that. And you can see it on his tape. He is a disciplined player. He fires off his stance low, like we're seeing against the Jets on this play. Fire low on this combo block. Make contact. Get your eyes on the near side linebacker. Stay square to the near side linebacker. Ensure that 77 on this play has the transition to your initial target, and then climb up, make the tackle, create a hole. Position your body between the defender and where your running back could be. And Greg Van Roten does a good job at that. There is a reason why Pro Football Focus had him graded as the 8th best overall offensive guard in football last year, and he was the 11th best in pass protection. We're going to go through some of those pass protection plays here in a little bit. He did surrender 21 pressures and 5 sacks last season in 626 pass blocking reps. And just in case he doesn't work out at right guard, he has 1,763 career snaps at left guard and 168 career snaps at center. Most of those were in 2022 with the Buffalo Bills. So let's go over some individual plays to break down. Van Roten proved to be an asset when he was facing these odd front teams. An odd front is when there was a nose tackle and then 2-4 techniques like we see on the screen right now, or possible 5 techniques if those players were moved over. But that front provides the offense easy access for the guards to climb. Van Roten is uncovered. There's nobody impeding him getting to the second level. And when you have his target being a linebacker that is outside of him by about 3 yards, you can see that he is able to cut that angle off. He takes good angles, smart angles, and he has good pace when he is moving. And he's also very controlled and surprisingly flexible when he has to change direction. As we're seeing a little bit here, that's not the easiest footwork for somebody who is 305, 310 pounds. Swing his backside around this player to the upfield portion of the player and then anchor himself down, cement his feet into the ground, make contact, absorb the contact, and then shuffle back towards the line of scrimmage and get mouth to mouth, teeth to teeth, while tossing the defender aside and eliminating him. And he did this a little bit later on in the game against the Patriots, where he made more direct contact with the player and then stayed in front of him. It's something that Bobby Okereke found out when Dexter Lawrence did this shift from a double 2 technique to a 1 tech 3 shade, giving Greg Van Roten that easy access up to the near side linebacker, who happened to be Bobby Okereke, that you could see on the right side of the screen. Okereke went into the contact. It's a tough spot to be in for a linebacker, and Greg Van Roten took Bobby Okereke for a ride and drilled him into the ground. And that's another thing that we see from Greg Van Roten is he is not afraid to finish a block violently. I don't think he has that reputation necessarily of being this dog run defender, and I wouldn't say that is completely consistent, but if he can finish and drive you into the deck, he will do so with some authority. If you need him to work backside blocks, he can do so. If you need him to scoop, reach, he can do all of that. And you could see the power in his footwork and how he drives off the deck with so much force to maximize his own strength while also optimally positioning himself. He has a lot of clips like this on his tape where he is the backside blocker in zone, and his job is to swing his hips to the front side of the play off of help from typically Jermaine Illuminor or the center from the Raiders. And he's able to do that, man. You see those power steps. Like, everything starts with your feet, offensive lineman. Feet, eyes, hands, right? Feet, eyes, hands. similar to defense. And this footwork's really good, and it positions himself to just eliminate this defender from reaching the play side. And he has quite a few plays like this. We're going to see it with the center on this one, and the defender loses his footing. But you could see him work. 68 goes up to the linebacker a little early, and we still see Van Roten handle this rep adequately. And the defender slips, like I said a little bit earlier. We're going to see another one where he just swings around the right shoulder of the one technique and then resets himself. And that's the thing I appreciate on this specific rep is he has to get from his guard spot to the outside shoulder of the one technique. And he does so. The path of the defensive lineman helps, but you can see how he swivels the hips, get his feet set. Now he needs to reestablish leverage because he's high in the contact right here. The defender has a better position. You could see how Van Roten's hat is much higher, so he has to resync his hips and re-anchor himself. And he does that by positioning his hands low, and you could see how this defensive lineman is trying to break the contact, but then he just sits back on his hips, and uses his anchor. Typically, and this includes pass protection, Van Roten is solid with his anchor. I'm not going to say he's a stone wall out there. There were times where he was pushed back, but he has strength. He has mobility. He does understand positioning. He understands leverage. And he shows good recovery as well throughout the tape that I've seen, and that includes pass protection. This play against the Chiefs, it's not pass protection, but it does show his ability to flip his own hips and redistribute his weight when he needs to recover. And this is another aspect, again, not a pass protection rep, but he loves to do this in pass protection where he jump sets and he quickly wants to dictate a rep. And he'll do this against some of the best defensive lineman in the league, like Chris Jones that you're seeing here. He likes to strike with that right hand, and then he comes with the left hand in an attempt to gain an early edge against Chris Jones. But I love how he's able to finish this rep to flush Chris Jones away from possibly winning through the right side of Greg Van Roten. And that's just how he pushes off that inside foot and then just drives Chris Jones out of the path of Zamir White. Now, Chris Jones gets some push, and Zamir White ends up running into Derek Nottie, who tossed his offensive lineman aside, but it's the redistribution of weight that I wanted to focus on. And we're going to see it here in pass protection where he's beat, and it looks like 93 is going to go right in and hit Jimmy Garoppolo. And Greg Van Roten is beat on this play, but watch how his hips are almost completely flipped as he guides this penetrator into the offensive tackle, and watch how he quickly turns on a dime to at least make some contact to keep Jimmy G up. You want an offensive lineman who can quickly recover when he is beat and understand and also recognize these threats. Seems like Van Roten has that in his wheelhouse. He's certainly experienced enough. I just didn't expect somebody to move this fluidly for a guy this old, because that is quick footwork, and that's quick change of direction. That is agility. You don't see that from a ton of offensive linemen, somebody who can open and close his hips so effortlessly at 34 years old. And I'm not trying to make this guy out like he's Jason Kelsey, because he's not. There are reasons why he was available this late. But hey, New York Giants fans, we understand what it's like to not have offensive linemen, and we got one who is functional. And he also has good eyes, as we see here. Makes contact with A'Shawn Robinson, allows Jermaine Illuminor to also make contact, and then eliminates Micah McFadden, who is attempting to penetrate the A-gap. Take him out, open up a hole for Josh Jacobs, and that's a great play by Bobby Okereke. Let's watch that after Bobby Okereke had a rough one before. Just stick Josh Jacobs right near the line of scrimmage. You got a big offensive line, duo block, makes contact. Right when he makes contact with DeForest Buckner, his eyes flash right to Zaire Franklin. He sees Zaire Franklin penetrating the A-gap. The center is out of position with Grover Stewart to make contact, so he bails on the double team and picks up the blitzing linebacker and allows the Raiders to pick up a couple yards. Quick eyes. That's what I want. I want quick eyes. I want players who are on the 1 yard line, who make this double team block and then flash their eyes directly to where they need to be, while also being square to his initial target, attacking the near side hip of the defensive lineman with his inside hand, and then abandoning that to take out the linebacker who was a threat. And that's an easy touchdown run for Josh Jacobs. Another good run by Josh Jacobs off the ass of Greg Van Roten, who sees this penetrating linebacker. This linebacker goes right towards the center and Greg Van Roten. Both of them engage the linebacker. The offensive line was not fooled. Carmen Brasillo, please, let's see more of that. And Josh Jacobs finds this lane. Greg Van Roten does a good job pinning the linebacker to the back of the rest of the offensive line. Another duo run against the Colts where DeForest Buckner gets engaged by Van Roten and the tackle. You're going to see Van Roten see Zaire Franklin set. Zaire Franklin goes back to the inside, and Van Roten gets his hands on him. Here's one of my favorite double teams, and it happens to be against Dexter Lawrence. Imagine driving Dexter Lawrence off the line of scrimmage. I mean, it's a lot of weight with Greg Van Roten and Jermaine Illuminor, but if we could see this on the right side of the line of scrimmage, this would be excellent. And I know a lot of this is Illuminor coming in from the front, but Van Roten needs to get his hands on Dexter Lawrence very quickly. Not the easiest thing to do. A lot of offensive linemen can attest to that. And he frames him up well, and that allows Jermaine Illuminor to make contact with his side and then drive Dexter Lawrence off of his spot and about 5 to 6 yards off the line of scrimmage. See another play against the New York Giants. This is Dexter Lawrence again, and Greg Van Roten wins this rep by getting his hat across Dexter Lawrence and then just driving through as the center has to pick up another penetrating Micah McFadden. And you can see Van Roten not in the best position at this point, but he has enough strength to get Dexter Lawrence out of position. And he drives and he drives and he keeps driving. And again, it's that little adjustment. Look, Dexter Lawrence is insanely flexible for a guy this size. And you can even see that a little bit here. He ends up running into one of his fellow defensive players, which does slow him down. But watch the recovery of Greg Van Roten to reestablish balance and become stable, put himself into a better position to finish this rep as he continues to drive Dexter Lawrence, again, 5 yards down the football field. Another rep against the Giants. I believe that's Ashawn Robinson. Great double team block. Get hip to hip with your homeboy, Jermaine Illuminor, and then just drive and roll your hips into contact, right? You want to get as much strength into your block. And in order to do that, you got to use that ground and you got to explode low to high into contact. And you can see how his hips just bend inward. And then watch the feet. The feet are just driving through. He is cleanly generating force into contact, and Illuminor ends up finishing that block on Ashawn Robinson. I love how low he's able to get into this contact. Hips are low, explode low to high, put all your might into the block. Let's see more of this. There's one against DJ Davidson where he just squares him up. DJ Davidson tries to break the contact of that outside arm, and you can see DJ Davidson is putting his hip a little bit more into the A gap, and there's just no defender in the B gap because Kayvon Thibodeau got tossed. And this happened 2 plays in a row against the Raiders. I don't know if I have the other play cut up. 2 plays in a row where Jermaine Illuminor did that to Kayvon Thibodeau, and it creates a massive hole to the outside. The B gap is wide open. It looks like DJ Davidson was weary of the A gap, and that worked to the benefit of Van Roten, whose contact was broken successfully by DJ Davidson. But as we see, Van Roten gets that outside arm back into the chest and holds just enough and just subtly enough to not get called, and DJ Davidson cannot get to the outside. And then you have the block to the by Devontae Adams on Adoree Jackson. Working some stretch zone with his buddy, his pal, his friend, Jermaine Illuminor. So we see stretch, we see power gap. When it comes to the Raiders last year, under Josh McDaniel, they ran a little bit more power gap, and then once Antonio Pierce took over as head coach, they adapted a little bit more to zone rushing, and we've seen some zone rushing plays throughout this. This is a very good block. You see how they all step, play side, step, plant that inside foot firmly as you make contact, and then roll your hips through again, position yourself, and just drive, baby. Now we're going to see some power gap where he is the kick out block. Watch how he quickly gets out of his stance, orients himself, locates the Pittsburgh Steeler, and then drives through the contact. It's a good rep right here. Little counter run. See 87 also makes contact there. Josh Jacobs has this huge hole. I'm sure we'll still see some power gap, even though the Giants going to run zone read. I've seen a lot of stretch zone, a lot of outside zone in camp so far as well. Here's another power gap play from Greg Van Roten where he misses Kayvon Thibodeau initially. And I love, and this kind of goes to the whole theme of what I've been talking about, the readjustment, right? Because Kayvon, he did this a lot last year. He would want to go around and then try to close before the running back got to the hole. So work around to the outside and then attempt to close. And as Kayvon Thibodeau is attempting to close, Greg Van Roten is already square to Kayvon Thibodeau after missing. You don't see this too frequently from a lot of pulling offensive linemen because they're not as coordinated as a player like Van Roten, which I feel freaking weird saying that just because I understand the context of this player, him being available 6 days into training camp, him being 34 years old. And I'm not trying to oversell him, but I do think this is one of his better assets, is his body control and his body movement and his ability to relocate after missing. His recovery skills as a run blocker are impressive. You can see it on this play. Misses, quick feet, sink hips, requires flexibility, requires balance, relocate, make contact, allow Josh Jacobs to pick up a few extra yards. Now we're going to see Van Roten in pass protection a little bit. This is a very good rep against Nacho. Remember I was talking a little bit earlier about that hard strike with the right arm that he loves to do. Has a wide base. He has a good stance overall when he is in the pre-snap phase. But look, quickly get on the offensive lineman. Punch, and then try to come in with your left, and then just sit down and anchor. And you can see how he does that very well. Now, Nacho is not known for his pass protection skills. You can see how the punch gets a little high, and Nacho's able to get underneath that outside arm, but then it's the readjustment and the reestablishment of that right arm as he sits back. And he just keeps the pocket intact. Very good rep. Is he doing this against Dexter Lawrence? No, he is not. And Dexter Lawrence was able to push him back several times in this game. Here's another good rep. This one's against A'Shawn Robinson. As a pass blocker, he's a player who will stalemate a lot, and that's all you want, right? Like, I'm not looking for a guy to just be tossing guys out of the club on every single play. That would be excellent, right? But if you could just stalemate and lock your guy up, that's a win for the offense 10 times out of 10. And A'Shawn Robinson is able to create the separation initially. Watch how A'Shawn Robinson makes the contact. You can see Van Roten get pushed back, and then Van Roten does not have his right arm established at all. His left arm is not established, so he needs to reset again. Reset himself, and then just grab cloth, grab chest. And he's very disciplined in pass protection. That's what I love about Greg Van Roten, right? He's a disciplined pass protector. He's only had 9 penalties throughout his entire career. So if he holds, it's going to be to the inside. It's a functional offensive lineman. Here against Chris Jones, he's just being a nuisance. You could see how the Raiders slid protection towards Chris Jones deliberately, so he has a lot of help. Not necessarily an indictment on Greg Van Roten, more just Chris Jones is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. See how he quickly sets on Chris Jones again. Right hand punch, left hand comes in. Punches get a little high, center of gravity's up there because Chris Jones is going to get lower than you are, but just finish and be annoying enough to not quickly lose the rep. And I didn't see many reps where he just quickly was beat, and it was a terrible looking pass protection rep. There were a few. Here's one where I felt like Carmen Brasillo and the Raiders did a good job of helping Greg Van Roten when the Chiefs decided to align 3 defensive linemen to one side of the line of scrimmage. And what they would do was Jermaine Illuminor would take a vertical set. And you're going to see that right here. Vertical set. So Jermaine Illuminor, even though he's going up against a wide defender in George Karlaftis, Jermaine Illuminor is taking this vertical set so he can help Greg Van Roten if necessary. And it does help him because Chris Jones is a lot to handle. And here Greg Van Roten, high punch, a little bit too high. Chris Jones times it up well, tries to swim over the top. Greg Van Roten annoying enough to shove him into the vertical setting, Jermaine Illuminor. And we heard earlier this offseason the Giants talking about maybe seeing a little bit more vertical sets. It was on John Schmelk's podcast with the New York Giants. I can't remember which offensive lineman it was, but they were mentioning how this offensive lineman was taking more vertical sets. And I think against fronts like this, where there is a star player who is aligned as a 4-eye or 4 technique, but he's angled inward because there is a wide defender, you might see the tackle vertical set and help for the offensive guard like we're seeing on the screen right now. Got to get creative when you're playing players like this because things like this can happen. You see Van Roten tries punch high again. It's an issue that he certainly has. Separation is then created. He can change direction, and he's quick enough to allow the quarterback to step up into the pocket, but you don't want your quarterback to be under pressure. And it's something that does happen when he is left on an island like this, and Illuminor isn't in that vertical set, and he has to take more of a 90-degree set to handle the wide rusher. But there's some pop right there in his hands. That first punch is a sturdy one. But we're going to see some not so good plays from Greg Van Roten as well. One-on-one against Chris Jones. Again, tries to go with the punch. Chris Jones is a master judo artist with his hands. Mr. Miyagi be teaching him. And that is just putting an offensive guard into a whirlwind. How he is able to get underneath the hands and then throw them aside. And the Raiders quarterback gets nailed. DeForest Buckner did something a little bit similar. And you can see with both of these reps, the reps weren't dictated. There's more patience here. Patient. And then he waited, and then he struck. So Greg Van Roten on this play, he strikes 1, 2, and he strikes basically on his third step, and it's timed up well by Chris Jones. On the play against DeForest Buckner, he does quickly reach out, but it's more to establish contact, and it's not a pop. And Buckner is another one who is just very good. And Van Roten slows him down enough to allow the quarterback to get rid of the football, but he gets beat around his edge when he is left on an island like this. Here's another play against the Colts where there's a blitz designed directly at Van Roten's position. Van Roten allows himself to get turned through that outside shoulder. There's one against the Vikings that's kind of ugly. Tries to go with that punch. You can see Illuminor is there to help. Illuminor ends up helping, but the center gets beat towards that side, and there's a blitzing defender, putting it 3v3 with a late third, creating chaos on that side of the line of scrimmage, and ultimately a sack for Brian Flores' team. But there's a double punch, and he can't get the clean contact. It's a good play by this pass rusher, and it occupies 2 Raiders, now Giant, offensive linemen, allowing one of the Vikings to come free for the sack. Here against the Giants, you're going to see Dexter Lawrence get underneath him and push him back into the deck. And the center ends up helping a little bit as well. And again, I mentioned before, I don't have concerns with Van Roten's anchor. I wouldn't say it's good or great. I think it's adequate. I think a lot about Van Roten is functional. I was more impressed with his tape overall than I thought I would be for, again, a player who is 34 years old who is still available. I think he easily could be the starting offensive guard for the New York Giants, possibly on the right side of the line of scrimmage. I think he upgrades the offensive line room. I think all of those things are true. Does that mean he is the missing piece for this team? No, there's still a lot that this team needs to be competitive, but I'm happier with this addition than I really thought I would be. And it's interesting to see what the Giants do when Evan Neal comes back. I would imagine they give Evan Neal a crack at offensive guard if they are very comfortable with Jermaine Illuminor on the right side. It's going to be a huge talking point all summer. And here's a nice play by Van Roten adapting to a power rush from Grover Stewart. Stewart's able to push him back a little bit, but this is just a snatch and trap, baby. Snatch him down at the deck and then trap him on the ground. The quarterback is able to get rid of the football. Good handwork there. Good understanding of how to get your defender on the ground. But I hope everybody enjoyed this quick little breakdown of Greg Van Roten. Look, again, to reiterate, the New York Giants somehow still needed depth and competent competition on their offensive line, and they gained one, and he could possibly be one of their best 5 starters come week 1. There's still a lot that needs to shake out, but the Giants are in a better position now that they've added Greg Van Roten, and it says a lot about the New York Giants situation and the state of the New York Giants, but hey, I'll take competent football players, and if he could play like he did last year, which was a career year for him, then I would be happy, and I think a lot of Giant fans would be happy. So I'm Nick Filato signing off. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care of each other, and let's go Giants.